Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Portsmouth City Council regular meeting for Monday, February 7th, 2011, here from the Eileen Dondero Foley Council Chambers. I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask the Deputy City Clerk to call the roll.
Mayor Farini.
Here.
Assistant Mayor Noveline Clayburgh.
Here.
Councilor Lister.
Here.
Councilor Hijmanic.
Here.
Councilor Spear.
Here.
Councilor Dwyer.
Here.
Councilor Coviello.
Here.
Councilor Kennedy.
Here.
Councilor Smith.
Here.
All present, Your Honor.
Thank you. And just for the record, I will say that Councilor Dwyer is present by teleconference. When we engage in voting this evening, we will engage in roll call votes so that her vote can be recorded, and we're doing this in accordance with appropriate law. With that, I'd like to ask if Councilor Spear could lead us in the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This evening we have a presentation which is the comprehensive annual financial report from Melanson, Heath and Company, our auditors. And with us this evening we have Scott McIntyre to offer the management letter and talk to us briefly in these regards. Welcome, Scott.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Thank you very much for the invitation this evening to come in and walk through the results of our audit of your financial statements for the year ended June 30, 2010. As the Mayor indicated, it's our understanding in the packages there is a comprehensive annual financial report, which, as the name implies, is a very comprehensive document. It's over 130 pages. It's my objective this evening to walk through just some of the high points in that comprehensive annual financial report. There's really a wealth of information in there, and I hope to be able to address some of the high points with you folks for just a few minutes tonight. And when I get through that, if there are any questions that the Mayor and Council has on other things in the CAFR or the comprehensive annual financial reports that perhaps I didn't touch, or questions that you may have on our management letter, which just has a couple of recommendations, I'll be happy to try to answer them. Before I get into the walking through the numbers in the comprehensive annual financial report, I want to let you know that our audit went well. And really what that means is that when we came in here to perform our audit field work, the books and records were well reconciled. Cash was reconciled between the bank cash books and the general ledger. Key receivables and all of the other key balance sheet accounts were well reconciled. And we proposed no significant audit adjustments as a result of our field work. Also, standards require me to just say audit standards require me to say two more quick things before I dive into the report, and that is that there were no disagreements on the application of generally accepted accounting principles. In other words, we didn't disagree on how a particular transaction should be recorded. And lastly, there are really no significant estimates in the report. Doesn't mean the report doesn't include estimates. There are a few, but none that I would categorize as being significant to the financial statements taken as a whole. So, if I could quickly turn your attention all the way over to page 19 of the very thick comprehensive annual financial report. Page 19, and it goes on to page 20, is our opinion on your financial statements. Everything else in this document belongs to the City of Portsmouth. I'm not going to walk through this in detail. I did want to point out just two particular items on this page. First, in the second paragraph down from the top, really what this paragraph is telling you is that we conducted our audit in accordance with two sets of audit standards. Those audit standards promulgated by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and those promulgated by the GAO, or the Government Accountability Office, that are specific to governmental audits. And the other thing on this page is the third paragraph down from the top. It begins with, in our opinion, and I won't read it. I'll just try to summarize it, that in our opinion, your financial statements are totally in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles for governmental entities here in the United States of America. Following our opinion, it begins on page 21 and goes all the way over to page 38, is management's discussion and analysis. This is a great resource to go back to at a later point in time to perhaps, it'll hit some of the high points. It'll summarize some of the high points that I'm going to touch upon in just a few moments, but it also may give you some trend analysis. There's about 2 years' worth of trend information in there. Of course, with a CAFR, in the very back of the report, you have almost 10 years' worth of trend information in there as well. So over on page 39, page 39, 40, and 41 are what I would categorize as your long-term perspective financial statements. This report really includes your balance sheets and your results of operations presented in two different methodologies. One is really a long-term perspective, which is page 39 through 41, and most of the rest of the report is on more of a cash basis. It's not exactly a cash basis, but it's more of a short-term perspective. I'll be happy to try to answer any questions that you may have on page 39, 40, and 41 if you have any. Over on page 42, this is the first place that almost all readers of your financial statements are going to turn. It's your governmental funds balance sheet, and the first place almost all readers are going to turn to is that first column of numbers, and working from the bottom up, it's the third number up. You see it's the undesignated fund balance reported in the general fund of $10,069,956. Again, that's the first place that almost all readers of your financial statements are going to turn to. By way of looking at that number in accordance with some benchmarks and prior year balances in that particular account, that $10 million number that you see in the bottom, third number up on the bottom of page 42, is virtually unchanged from June 30, 2009 to June 30, 2010. It increased by about $200,000, which, given the budget that the general fund has, that's where I'm saying it's virtually unchanged. Also, that $10 million represents a little bit less than 12% of your general fund expenditures. That's a benchmark that rating agencies would like to use as a methodology for comparing the financial position of a community. What's interesting to note that while the fund balance went up a nominal $200,000, that percentage of that account balance as a percentage of general fund expenditures was really unchanged. So while the fund balance went up, the percentage of that account to the general fund expenditures really was unchanged. One more quick note on page 42, and then what I'd like to do is I'd like to explain how that $200,000 increase in that key unreserved, undesignated fund balance reported in the general fund, how that was arrived at based upon your results of operations. But also on page 42, just to the right of the general fund column, you see a balance sheet that's titled up your school renovations. This is new this year. Because of the size of this particular fund, as of June 30, 2010, it's shown as its major fund here. In essence, as I'm sure you folks know, you issued $15 million in debt for school renovations towards the end of fiscal year 2010. Much of that cash remained as of June 30th and will be expended in fiscal year 2011. Back to the general fund for a moment. Again, I mentioned that key number, the unreserved, undesignated fund balance, increased by approximately $200,000. If we want to go take a look at exactly how that occurred, I think the answer lies on page 46. Page 46 is a presentation of your results of operation for fiscal 10 compared with your budget. And the key column is that final column on the right, the variance with the final budget. Working from top to bottom, about halfway down the page, you see total revenues and other sources of a positive number, $1,799,000, revenues in excess of what you anticipated. Likewise, as you move down the page, just before the grand total, you see total expenditures and other uses, a positive $1,175,000. The combination of those two things, the revenues in excess of what the budget called for and the unspent appropriations by the departments, add up to the number in the lower right-hand corner of $2,975,000. Now, that $2,975,000 just represents the results of operation compared with the budget. What you don't necessarily see on this page that's present in the footnotes but I'm not going to walk through so many pages in detail in the footnotes, is that for fiscal year 2010, the city used almost $2.7 million of its existing fund balance to balance the operations and capital for the general fund budget. So when you take the $2,975,000 positive results of operations, the lower right-hand corner of page 46, and then sort of factor in the fact that to establish the budget, almost $2.7 million of your existing fund balance was used. The 2.9 less the 2.7 in fund balance that was used, you come out with a net difference of about $200,000. It's not exact, but it's about $200,000, and that's the driving factor for why your undesignated fund balance back on the prior page that we were looking at increased by only a nominal $200,000. So. There is as I mentioned, there's footnotes in these financial statements that sort of explain the concept that I was just talking about, where it may appear like there were real strong operating results for fiscal 2010, but you also have to factor in that there was use of fund balance during the year, which is why, even with the results you see on page 46, that your unreserved fund balance increased by the nominal amount of $200,000. Also, I'd like to point out on page 46, on the revenue side, one of the largest contributors to the favorable revenue variance, right above the subtotal, you see other financing sources with a favorable variance of $512,000. Virtually all of that is a one-time, non-recurring bond premium, based on, probably, if I remember correctly, from the bonds that were sold from the school renovation projects, a one-time revenue source, a non-recurring revenue source. Similarly, one of the largest contributors to the $1,175,000 in expenditure turnbacks is, as you see, it's a category. It's called non-operating, with a positive variance of $605,000. Most of that, virtually all of it, not all, but virtually all of it, is a result of debt service that was unexpended as of year end, based upon the time. It was really a timing issue when bonds were originally sold versus when the payment schedule called for the first payment to occur. That's a very quick overview of the general fund results of operations. There's just one more item in the CAFR that I would like to just draw your attention to. It's on the prior page to what we were just looking at, page 45. I don't very often go into this, but I'd like to just touch upon a couple of quick things. What page 45 represents is a reconciliation between the long-term perspective and the short-term perspective. In my opinion, there's a couple of key things here that I like to point out. First of all, in my copy of my notes here this evening, I've circled a few numbers. The first number I've circled is the third number down from the top. It's called depreciation expense of $4.4 million. I've circled that number and I've compared it to, drop down to about two-thirds of the way down the page, you see repayment of debt of $6,107,905. I've circled those two numbers, and in my notes, I compare them. Because what this tells me is that you're paying off your debt, your long-term bonds payable, at a rate of about $6 million a year. And the assets that you acquired or constructed with that long-term financing are depreciating at a rate of $4.4 million per year. I look at that, and it tells me that you're paying off your debts faster than those assets are depreciating. Positive sign right there. Last thing on page 45, third number up from the bottom, you see it's titled compensated absences, and it has a balance in it of $379,136. It's a positive number, and by it being a positive number, it means that liability, the compensated absence liability, the earned time, sick, and vacation that's accrued by employees, that liability is actually coming down. And I know that's been an objective here in the city for several years, and there's a lot of hope that it will continue to decline, and a lot of expectation that it will continue to decline. I just thought it would be important, while it's not as big as some of the other numbers I've talked about tonight, that might be an indicator of some positive decision-making that's occurred over the past few years, that liability is coming down. So that's a very quick overview of our audit, of your comprehensive annual financial report. I've tried to hit some of the high points tonight, focusing on the general fund. and I'd be happy to try to answer any questions that the board may have.
Questions for Scott? Councilor Kennedy.
Do you see at any point right now where the American Recovery Investment Act funds are going to jeopardize or change anything as they start going away?
What I see, the relationship that I was just talking about, where you're paying off your bonds payable at a rate that significantly exceeds the assets that were being depreciated as a favorable presentation here in the balance sheet. The City of Portsmouth, like so many governments, received a significant amount of stimulus funding. Somewhere in here I could probably find it, but it is significant for fiscal year 2010. So what happened is you acquired assets, both water fund, sewer fund, and general government as a whole. Those assets weren't financed with bonds payable, but they were financed with grant revenues. So that's for fiscal year 2010, not in your general fund, but the larger picture, the more long-term perspective, you see really, really strong results of operation. But that's only because these grants that were awarded to the city were used to construct sewer facilities, water facilities, and those types of things. What happens in subsequent years is those assets begin to depreciate. And you're going to incur that depreciation expense without bonds to repay. And what happens when you have bonds to repay is you raise revenues to repay that debt. So there's a matching of the revenue with the depreciation expense. Here you're going to have nothing but depreciation expense in the outlying years. So that could be something that might be seen as less favorable going forward. So I hope that answers your question.
Councilor Kennedy.
Just a follow-up to that. So do you feel that it's going to be a detriment, and when will it appoint? I mean, right now you're saying that our repayment of debt is higher than our depreciation, which is great. At what point do you foresee, or do you forecast, or maybe the city official has to do that we would see an equalization?
I would need to do some analysis of bonds payable schedules and expectation of when the assets are going to be put online. But I mean, when I say put online, I mean when the depreciation expense would begin to be incurred and match things up. I'm just not.
If I might, first of all, there is limited funds now being made available for sewer and water. So we're not going to have that issue. Okay. I wish I had the problem, but we're not going to have that problem anymore because the SRF grant fund has been suspended. We turned back. We did not take the ERA money for the water plant because of reasons I've explained to the City Council with Davis-Bacon wage rates. So we haven't had that experience.
Further questions or comments? Councilor Coviello.
I think this question is probably better directed at the city manager. The $2.7 million spent out of the general fund, is that parking? Parking expenses?
I don't know. Maybe I'll defer that to the finance director. I'd rather. I think I know, but I'd rather have her give the exact answer.
For the record, Judy Belanger, welcome.
Okay, good evening. Most of that in that particular year, in fiscal year 10, we did use out of undesignated fund balance a little over $1 million for collective bargaining. And then that number there, the 2.7 that Scott's referring to, is kind of a combination of our use of reserves and any use of undesignated fund balance.
So, for example, debt service reserve, Judy, and those types of things?
Yeah, we used like $1.3 million of debt reserved for debt in that particular year in FY10.
Just to let council, just so that you're aware, when you get the budget, you'll see that over the years, what we've tried to do so that we don't have any spiking on our debt service payment in any particular year, we've set aside money in a reserve from fund balance so that we take that and try to smooth out the rate. So if you look at your budget, you'll see on the revenue side of the budget and the summary, you'll see debt service reserve that we've used, and that offsets. So we do have a certain amount in that we've set aside, but we don't use it all at once. We try to smooth it out so that we don't have these ups and downs.
Assistant Mayor.
I don't know if you can answer this, but the school lunch program, do you have any recommendations for what the school department could do to try to get that not to be a deficit?
Fiscal year 2010, I think they made substantial progress in the fiscal year. The deficit improved dramatically, and I think at year end, I'm turning to my notes, but I believe it just had a deficit of only about $6,000. So I would encourage the school to continue here in fiscal 2011 what they accomplished in 2010.
Any further questions or comments for Scott? If not, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
We now move on to acceptance of the minutes of the January 18, 2011 City Council meeting, which are properly before you. You've had an opportunity to review them. Do we have a motion to approve and accept?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Unopposed, that's unanimous. We now move on to, I'm sorry, you're right, Council Coviello, thank you very much. A roll call, please.
Assistant Mayor Noveline Claiborne.
Yes.
Council Lister.
Yes.
Council Hitchmonic.
Yes.
Council Spear.
Yes.
Council Dwyer.
yes,
Council Coviello.
Yes.
Council Kennedy.
Yes.
Council Smith.
Yes.
Mayor Farini.
Yes. We now move on to the public comment session. There are 3 speakers this evening. We'd ask that you come to the microphone. You have 3 minutes to speak. After 2 minutes and 30 seconds, you will see the city attorney hold up a placard which indicates that you have 30 seconds remaining. And when you see the thank you sign raised, your 3 minutes is up. I would ask that you identify yourself, indicate your address, and speak on the subject of your choice. Our first speaker this evening is Representative Rich DiPentima regarding fluoride.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. For the record, I'm Rich DiPentima, 16 Dunlin Way, Portsmouth, New Hampshire. I'm a retired public health know-it-all. And I just here to support the recommendation that you will have later in the meeting from DHHS and CDC to reduce the amount of fluoride that's added to the drinking water from the current 1.0 part per million to the new recommendation of 0.7 part per million. I think it's a very prudent recommendation based on the data available to us regarding the incidence of mild to moderate dental fluorosis in children. But I also urge you to consider not just one part of this report that the CDC came out with. I think you need to look at the entire report in its entirety, not just this part that deals with the recommendation to reduce the amount of fluoride. The CDC in its report still strongly recommends and supports fluoridation, community water fluoridation, as a safe and effective means of preventing dental decay. The CDC still considers community water fluoridation as the single most important thing that a community can do to improve the oral health of its citizens. So I urge you not to look too far into what the CDC is recommending. It's simply a recommendation based on data that's available, and it's a prudent recommendation. But to think about the overall recommendations that the CDC is making, they are still very supportive of community water fluoridation. There is nothing in their report that indicates any indication that they are wavering from the support of community water fluoridation or to even consider abandoning community water fluoridation. So I would urge you to take this CDC recommendation as it's intended to be taken and take the prudent steps that they recommend, and to consider the entire report as it's been released. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Rick Horowitz regarding fluoride.
Good evening. Rick Horowitz, 127 Gate Street in Portsmouth. I would also say that I would agree that we should have an immediate lowering of the fluoride level to 0.7 milligrams per liter. But I continue to advocate for removing the fluoridation completely. I think this is a great step, but it's insufficient. According to the CDC, 3.6% of 12 to 15-year-olds have moderate to severe dental fluorosis. And I'm going to be submitting a photograph of what moderate fluorosis looks like. Moderate fluorosis, if you look at this, it definitely requires cosmetic dentistry. And There was a cosmetic dentist, Dr. Bill Ormanson, who gave testimony at the hearings for House Bill 312. That's the bill to add a warning on water bills regarding fluoridation so that parents don't use fluoridated water for their infants' water. That's a real problem because people don't know about this. And in his testimony, he cited a cost of $1,500 to $3,000 per tooth for the cosmetic dentistry necessary for fluorosis. And so you can look at 3.6% of 12 to 15-year-olds. If you do a steady state analysis of that, that's 3.6% of the population. That's over 10 million people in the United States. That's $1,500 to $3,000 per tooth. You have to redo this after 10 to 15 years. You can only do it twice, and then you have to have your teeth capped. So you're looking at probably somewhere in the range of $32,000 per mouth for this. That's times 10 million people. That's $320 billion just in cosmetic dentistry. It's a point that hasn't really been touched on before. I thought I'd touch on it tonight. This 3.6% as well, fluoridation, tooth fluorosis is a biomarker for fluoride going into other parts of the body, particularly the bone, pineal gland in your brain, and other bony parts of your body. And fluoride is only about 50% flushed out of your body by your kidneys. About 50% remains in your body that you drink over your entire life. So it's a cumulative poison. And I just wanted to read one thing here. We're going to drop this fluoride to 0.7, hopefully. But I have here a study that was done in Singapore by the Community Dental Oral, it was published in Community Dental Oral Epidemiologic Journal here by the Department of Preventive Dentistry, University of Singapore. They noted Singapore here has been fluoridating at 0.7 parts per million. That's what we're talking about here. Since 1957, they fluoridated 100% of their country, and they had a prevalence in this. They looked at 1,739 Singaporean children, 9, 12, and 16 years old, different ethnic groups. They found 82.6% had dental fluorosis, and 9.2% of children had severe fluorosis, 26% had moderate fluorosis. So, point being that the level of 0.7 is not necessarily safe. And I'd like to submit a couple of...
Please come forward. We'll give them to the Deputy Clerk for the record. Thank you. Thank you. Our final speaker for public comment this evening is Roland Cody regarding parking on the street.
Good evening. My name is Roland Cody. I live at 188 Union Street. It's the portion of Union Street that runs between Middle Street and State Street. I'm here tonight to express my concern that every winter, and not just this winter, we live in a situation where it is literally impossible for a emergency vehicle to get to my house or most of the houses on Union Street. As it snows and snows some more, the snowbanks get widened, the road gets narrowed. People do exactly what they do in July. They park on this side, they park on this side. It becomes extremely narrow. I drive an Acura, very normal vehicle. There are often times where I literally have to stop to about 1 mile per hour, look right, look left. Can I make it? Do I have to back up in order to get through these vehicles? I'll express my opinion that our DPW does an A-rated job. I don't think there's any answer there. I don't think they can do a better job than they do. So there seem to be very limited. If something is going to occur to fix this issue, in my mind there seems to be limited things, and the only thing I can come up with is disallow parking on one side of the street, particularly in the winter. I'm not sure of the exact forum to, I am going this Thursday to the, I'm not sure what it's called, but the parking meeting Thursday morning at 8 o'clock. I just wanted to get this word out to the largest audience that I could, and I'll be going there Thursday morning to
Noted, and we'll just exceed the rules a little bit. And Councilor Smith?
Thank you. If I could just break tradition on it. At the Traffic and Safety meeting on Thursday at 8 o'clock here in the City Hall chambers, we'll be discussing that issue as well. So please invite your neighbors to come down, and we'll be taking testimony and looking into how we can resolve the situation.
Does it help to have as many neighbors as possible to support?
Absolutely. The more information we can have, the more informed of a decision we can make.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. That concludes the public comment section of this evening's meeting. We now move on to continue with a public hearing that had previously been open but suspended given the inclement weather at the last City Council meeting of January 18, 2011. The public hearing remains open, so I will repeat the rules of the public hearing to see if there are any individuals here to speak. It's a resolution authorizing a bond issue of up to $3 million for treatment plant engineering and equipment performance testing and long-term control plan implementation. If you wish to speak when I open the public hearing, please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and you may speak for as long as you wish on the subject, understanding that other individuals may wish to speak as well, and I'd ask you to be considerate of them. Once you have completed speaking, the next speaker should come forward. I will not be calling 3 rounds to this. You'll get one opportunity to speak. And so with that, I will seek to go forward with the public hearing, which is currently suspended, and ask any individuals who wish to speak for, against, or simply to this item to come forward. Ask one more time in case people wish to come forward and speak regarding a public hearing on this issue. Seeing no one rise, I close the public hearing. We now move on to approval of grants and donations. Item A is a National Association of County and City Health Officials, NACCHO grant. Question is whether or not we would move to authorize the city manager to accept and expend a $5,000 grant from this organization for the purpose of sustaining current efforts and further develop Greater Portsmouth's Medical Reserve Corps unit.
So moved.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second? Discussion.
Roll call.
Hearing none, thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Assistant Mayor Evelyn Kleberg.
Yes.
Councilor Lister.
Yes.
Councilor Edgemonic.
Yes.
Councilor Spear.
Yes.
Councilor Dwyer.
Yes.
Councilor Coviello.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Smith.
Yes.
Mayor Farini.
Yes. Thank you. Passes unanimously. Item B, acceptance of a grant to the Portsmouth Police Department from the Department of Justice Violence Against Women Act, VAWA, to fund our victim witness advocate position of $41,339. We would require a motion to approve and accept this grant for the police department as indicated.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Discussion.
Your Honor,
Council Spear.
I'm going off my memory, which isn't the best, but during the budget discussion last year, we had, I believe this was one of the positions that was eliminated due to it was half funded by a grant and half funded out of their police budget, and then so it went away, and this is bringing it back? Is that how this is
I
working?
believe that they were able to fund the position last year through other grant monies, and this grant will be funded the $41,000, and then there's an additional $11,800 through a recovery grant as well. So it will be continued to be 100% funded through the additional money is for the benefits. So all parts of the position are funded. This is the major part of the funding,
right.
And then there's an additional grant funding for it. But what they basically, I believe, have continued to fund it through other grant sources.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Spear. Further discussion on this item? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Assistant Mayor Evelyn Kleberg.
Yes.
Councilor Lister.
Yes.
Councilor Edgemonic.
Yes.
Councilor Spear.
Yes.
Councilor Dwyer.
Yes.
Councilor Coviello.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Smith.
Yes.
Mayor Farini.
Yes. Before you next, we have consideration of resolutions and ordinances. The first is a first reading of a resolution increasing the maximum income limit for individuals qualifying for the elderly real estate tax exemptions. You'll note that there are, and we have discussed previously, 2 options. One is an option of a 1% increase, and one is an option of a 0.64% increase. We would need to have motion practice to put one or the other or both in play.
Well, I don't know if you would be.
Well, we're going to have one or the other in the first instance. So, City Manager, do you care to speak further to this?
Sure. As requested at the last meeting, I brought back two options. We have two resolutions prepared for you to pass first reading. So just pick one of them, A or B, and we can move forward on that. That would be both for the elderly and then for the disabled.
Does someone care to make a motion putting one of these on the floor for the purpose of discussion?
For the purposes of discussion, I'll make the motion to accept option A, the 1%, the rounded up.
Second.
We have a motion duly seconded. Discussion. Councilor Kennedy.
I just have a quick question, and it kind of goes to both these. My question is, when I was looking at the abatement paperwork today, there was a line item on there for putting in information for cause or charitable cause or disability on that application. I was wondering what effects does that have on this, if any, and it might not.
I'd ask the assessor to come down and speak to the issue.
While she's making her way down, please note for the record and for people who are listening at home or watching at home that this is to pass first reading and hold a public hearing and adoption at the February 22nd, 2011 City Council meeting, depending upon where we go with which of these options. Roseanne, welcome.
Are you talking about the abatement application or the exemption application?
It was on the abatement application.
Okay. When they file for the exemption, they would not fill out an abatement application.
Okay, I didn't know what that had to do with this. That was, I guess, my question.
It would have nothing to do with this, unless for some reason they felt that they weren't able to file for the elderly exemption during a specific time period, or they felt due to extenuating circumstances, then they would file an abatement application along with the exemption application, so I could apply it to the last year's taxes.
So on the abatement application, the question of hardship that's on that one question is hardship, disability. I don't have it right with me, and I apologize, but it listed quite a few things like disability, hardship, elder exemption, veteran. That doesn't have any effect on this. That's just if they don't get it, that would be allow them to provide.
If they do not get the elderly exemption, they can file for an abatement. And if disapproved at that point again, then they can bring it forward to the Board of Tax and Land Appeals or Superior Court after the initial application has been denied by myself.
Okay.
Further discussion, Councilor Coviello.
Thanks. I'll support this this suggestion. I'm the one who asked last meeting, if you recall, about just keeping it at 0.64 CPI, and my point was, this is kind of one of those topics where people could say, what do you have against the elderly? Or that sort of thing. But this is it's a finite pool of money that our taxpayers pay, and we don't have exemptions. We have exemptions for elderly and veterans. We don't have exemptions for people who just are low income. So with us moving these levers around, we're putting, by taking less of a burden off of the elderly, you're putting more of a burden on everybody else, where everybody else also includes our low income people. So I just want to be cognizant of that, and that if we want to tie it to CPI, which increased, this says CPI increased 0.64. Well, the CPI, what we're really going for is how much has their ability to pay increased. So we're using CPI. And if you look at, so that would assume a 0.64% increase in their income. Where, if you're on Social Security, your income hasn't gone up. It's all tied together, as my point is, and I just wanted to be more realistic or more pure on how we tied it all together. But I'll just support it.
Thank you, Councilor Coviello. Further discussion. Councilor Smith.
Thank you. I just want to give the reason why I would support. Normally, I would just do it for the CPI, and the reason I'm going for the rounding up option this year is that Social Security did not get an increase this year, and so if this is one way to be able to help the seniors in the town, in our city, that's one of the reasons why. It's not something probably I'd practice continuing years down the road. But for this one time in this economic hardship we have out there, and seeing that the seniors did not get an increase in Social Security, I think this is one way that we can at least offer a little help.
Thank you, Councilors Smith and Coviello. Any further discussion? Assistant Mayor Noveline Claiborne.
I don't think I'm going to support it. I think the .64 is the CPI, the level of the CPI, and I think it's good for our citizens to just stay at that level. I think it's consistent. I think we should just stay at the CPI level of .64. And if I'm reading this correctly, I just like the .64, but I'm more comfortable with the .64 is the CPI limit.
Further discussion on this issue? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Assistant Mayor Noveline Kleberg.
No.
Councilor Lister.
Yes.
Councilor Hedgemonic.
Yes.
Councilor Spear.
No.
Councilor Dwyer.
Yes.
Councilor Coviello.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Smith.
Yes?
Mayor Farini.
Yes.
Passes 7-2.
We now move on to item B, which is a first reading of a resolution increasing the maximum income limit for individuals qualifying for the disabled real estate tax exemption. The options are the same, and we would need a motion to put this on the floor, noting once again that we would be seeking to pass first reading. Well, we'd be passing first reading this evening, and then we would hold a public hearing and potential for adoption at the February 22nd, 2011 City Council meeting, depending upon which option is chosen. Does someone care to put a motion on the floor?
So moved.
Assistant Mayor Noveline Kleberg, are you moving to have it be 1% option A, or are you going to move for option B?
I'm moving for the option 1%.
Okay, that would be option A.
Second.
We have a second discussion. Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Assistant Mayor Noveline Kleberg.
Yes.
Councilor Lister.
Yes.
Councilor Hedgemonic.
Yes.
Councilor Spear.
Yes.
Councilor Dwyer.
Yes.
Councilor Coviello.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Smith.
Yes.
Mayor Farini.
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
We move to item C, first reading of ordinance amending zoning ordinance chapter Article 7, section 10.730, gateway development, subsection 10.735, sustainability standards, and we would be moving to accept, if someone were to so make a motion, the recommendation of the planning board and pass first reading and schedule a public hearing and second reading of the proposed zoning ordinance change as presented at the February 22nd, 2011 council meeting. Does anyone care to make a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion made and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Assistant Mayor Noveline Kleberg.
Yes.
Councilor Lister.
Yes.
Councilor Hedgemonic.
Yes.
Councilor Spear.
Yes.
Councilor Dwyer.
Yes.
Councilor Coviello.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Smith.
Yes?
Mayor Farini.
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
Item D, adoption of a proposed bonding resolution for up to $3 million for treatment plant engineering and equipment performance testing and long-term control plan implementation. The motion, one conceivable motion would be to adopt a proposed bonding resolution for this amount for the treatment plant engineering and equipment performance testing and long-term control plan implementation as presented.
So moved.
We have a motion from
Second.
Councilor Coviello, seconded by Assistant Mayor Noveline Kleberg. Discussion. Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Assistant Mayor Noveline Kleberg.
Yes.
Councilor Lister.
Yes.
Councilor Hedgemonic.
Yes.
Councilor Spear.
Yes.
Councilor Dwyer.
Yes.
Councilor Coviello.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Smith.
Yes?
Mayor Farini.
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
We now have before us the consent agenda, and I'm going to read through the consent agenda and ask for a motion to adopt. If anyone wishes to remove something from the consent agenda for separate consideration, now would be the time to do it in accordance with our rules and practice. Hearing no one move forward in that fashion. Item A is acceptance of donations for Art Speak Annual Appeal. Liz Wright and Scott Segee, $25. Anthony and Cheryl Coviello, $50. G. Willikers Toy Shop, $50. Item B is acceptance of donations for the USS Virginia. J.D. Johnson, $20. Amanda Toscano, $20. Carol Zink Mayu, $80. Boynton Waldron, Doliak, Woodman, and Scott, $100. Kathleen and David Brown, $100. Kevin and Roseanne Clark, $160. Northrop Grumman, AMSEC, $200. American Legion, Kathy Lynch and Bob Andelman. Austin Nickerson, Catherine and James Pope, $225. Orbis Inc., $300. And American Legion, Tom Decker contribution, $1,000. Item C is a letter from Janine Sylvester, Runners Alley LLC, requesting permission to hold the 14th Annual Runners Alley Red Hook Brewery Memorial 5K on Sunday, May 29, 2011, at 11 o'clock a.m. And finally, a letter from Penny Gant, chairman of the 2011 Ferry House Tour, requesting permission to hold the annual Ferry House Tour on Saturday, September 17, 2011, and Sunday, September 18, 2011, from noon to 4 p.m. Do we have a
Move to
motion?
pass the consent agenda. Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Sister Mayor Noveline Claiborne?
Yes.
Council Lister?
Yes.
Council Hidjmanic?
Yes.
Councilor Spear?
Yes.
Councilor Dwyer?
Yes.
Councilor Coviello?
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy?
Yes.
Councilor Smith?
Yes.
Mayor Farini?
Yes. Item 11, presentation and consideration of written communications and petitions. Item A is a letter from Amy Pettengill, the National Eating Disorders Association, requesting permission to hold the first annual Eating Disorder Awareness Walk on Sunday, June 26, 2011, at 11 o'clock a.m. Does anyone care to make a motion?
So moved.
Okay, that's a motion to refer to the city manager with power.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Discussion. Discussion, inquiry, hearing none. Roll call vote, please.
Sister Mayor Noveline Claiborne?
Yes.
Council Lister?
Yes.
Councilor Hidjmanic?
Yes.
Councilor Spear?
Yes.
Councilor Dwyer?
Yes.
Councilor Coviello?
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy?
Yes.
Councilor Smith?
Yes.
Mayor Farini?
Yes. Next is item B, a letter from Tom and Zelita Morgan regarding the proposed youth recreation facility, and a staff memorandum has also been given to you and is in your binder. Does anyone care to make a motion regarding that correspondence?
I wasn't able to locate the memorandum. I don't know where I missed it.
I have it.
It's attached right to the letter.
It's
right
stapled to the
behind
same letter, so it might.
It's stapled to the same letter. I apologize if that
Oh.
is.
I make a motion
It did, yeah.
to, I'd like to make a motion.
Pardon me?
I'll make a motion.
Councilor Spear?
Second.
Well, he didn't
I'd
make a
like
motion yet.
I'd like to make a motion to accept and place on file and to have copies of the letter and the memorandum given out to whomever is attending our meeting on this,
Okay.
I think on Wednesday, right? So.
Noted. Do we have a second? Sister Mayor Noveline
Yes,
Claiborne? Thank
second.
you. And note once again, as I indicated, I will often say when we take the action of placing a letter on file, it means that we're taking no particular action at that time. In the case of this one, Councilor Spear did offer that the letter and response also be available for the joint meeting of the JBC School Board and City Council this Wednesday at 6:30 regarding construction of the middle school. So just for clarification purposes. Additional discussion on this item? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Sister Mayor Noveline Claiborne?
Yes.
Councilor Lister?
Yes.
Councilor Hidjmanic?
Yes.
Councilor Spear?
Yes.
Councilor Dwyer?
Yes.
Councilor Coviello?
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy?
Yes.
Councilor Smith?
Yes.
Mayor Farini?
Yes. Item C is a letter from Arlen A. Chaffee, Loco Sports, Inc., requesting permission to hold a 5K road race at Pease on Monday, July 4, 2011, at 8 o'clock a.m. Does anyone care to make a motion?
So moved.
Well, the motion in this case would be to direct it or refer it to the Pease Development Authority, as this would be within their jurisdiction. So with that understanding, Councilor Kennedy, do we have a second for her motion? Moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? It's unanimous. I'm sorry. Thank you. They reminded me on the roll call. My apologies, Councilor Dwyer, and to everyone out there. Roll call, please.
Sister Mayor Noveline
Yes.
Claiborne? Councilor Lister?
Yes.
Councilor Hidjmanic?
Yes.
Councilor Spear?
Yes.
Councilor Dwyer?
Yes.
Councilor Coviello?
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy?
Yes.
Councilor Smith?
Yes.
Farini?
Yes. That concludes, I'm sorry, it does not conclude. Did I,
Letter from Bill Hess.
the letter from Bill House. Yeah, item D. This is a letter from Bill Hess requesting a boundary line adjustment for his property located at 54 Rogers Street near the middle school. Does anyone care to make a motion as regards this letter?
Refer to the city attorney.
Well, and how about for report back, Counselor?
Report back.
Yep, that would be, and that's assumed. Do we have a
Second.
second discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Mayor Evelyn Kleberg.
Yes.
Counsel Lister.
Yes.
Counsel Hedgemark.
Yes.
Counselor Spear.
Yes.
Counselor Dwyer.
Yes.
Counselor Coviello.
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy.
Yes.
Counselor Smith.
Yes.
Mayor Farini.
Yes. We now move on to reports and communications from city officials, first being the city manager and his items which require action. Item 1.
Thank you, Your Honor. The first item deals with a action on a fact finder's report regarding AFSCME Local 1386 School Custodial Unit and the Portsmouth School Board. As you are aware, the Portsmouth School Board rejected the fact finder's report, and recommendation is to reject this report, similar to what the school board did.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to reject the report.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Coviello and Councilor Lister. Discussion. Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Assistant Mayor Evelyn Kleberg.
Yes.
Counsel Lister.
Yes.
Counselor Hedgemark.
Yes.
Counselor Spear.
Yes.
Counselor Dwyer.
Yes.
Counselor Coviello.
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy.
Yes.
Counselor Smith.
Yes.
Mayor Farini.
Yes. Item 2.
Thank you, Your Honor. The next item deals with the request from the Seacoast Growers Association to continue their farmers market at the parking lot here at City Hall for the 2011 season. I've attached a copy of the license agreement. And we do have, again, the license agreement attached where the Seacoast Growers Association has reviewed it along with city staff, and we're comfortable with proceeding as we have in the past.
Do we have a motion? We'd be authorizing the city manager to enter into this license agreement with Seacoast Growers Association for 2011, much as we have done in the past.
I have a question, but I guess we should put a motion on the floor first.
If you please.
I make a motion that we authorize the city manager to enter into a license agreement with the Seacoast Growers Association for 2011 with a stipulation that they continue to look for a potential other place for the farmers market.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Can I speak to the issue?
City manager.
The issue that came up with there were about 4 residents. I know Joe Kuchar's here tonight from the Housing Authority. There were 4 residents that were concerned with the farmers market at City Hall. After I received the petition from the ones that from the City Council, there were about 6 residents from that facility that came over and said that they did not want their signatures on that petition. So basically, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but I think there were about 4 people from that facility that indicated they were concerned with the farmers market. A majority of the people at the facility like the farmers market, want to keep the farmers market there, and the Housing Authority is supportive of the farmers market at that location. So I just want to make the council aware of that. And certainly we can always explore other areas. There might be other areas, but it appears that after this conversation we've moved the farmers market twice. This appears to be a location that works for everybody. But again, I think we're always open to, looking, and we will. Is there another area that's better? Well, we can check that out, but I think maybe even doing a survey from people that come to the farmers market, see what they think. So I would recommend the City Council go forward in this season. I think there's a majority of people that feel that this is a good location, but it doesn't hurt to ask people if there are other locations.
Your Honor?
Yes, please.
Given that information, I'd be willing to amend, if it's okay with a second, my motion to accept this and give out a survey.
It's okay with a second.
Acceptable to the second.
Acceptable.
Discussion. Councilor Lister.
The discussion I was going to have was to propose the survey, asking people, but there were also some other items that, and without getting into it this evening, that people were concerned about. One was the early setup. Another was noise early in the morning, and certainly there seemed to be some concern about a particular rooster who makes a lot of noise during the farmers market.
Counselor, yeah.
So I just asked that we try and be sensitive to that, and even though it's four people who raise a concern, and certainly want to appease all the residents on the Hill here. But
we do have representatives here from the Seacoast Growers Association. They've heard what you had to say, and we'll work with them.
That's all I ask. Thank you.
And for a kind thought for us all, isn't it nice to think, albeit that it may bother some people, that rooster, that we're thinking about summer for a little while here this evening. Okay. Further discussion on this issue?
Roll call.
Roll call vote, please.
Assistant Mayor Noveline Claiborne.
Yes.
Councilor Lister.
Yes.
Councilor Hedgemonic.
Yes.
Councilor Spear.
Yes.
Councilor Dwyer.
Yes.
Councilor Coviello.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Smith.
Yes.
Mayor Farini.
Yes. Item 3.
Thank you, Ryan. The next item is a proposed renewal of a lease agreement between the Sons of Italy and the City of Portsmouth for their property, for the property on One Plains for 1-year extension effective April 1, 2011 through March 31st, 2012. And I believe there might be one item that I would refer to the city attorney on, the last paragraph, that there needs to be a date that needs to be changed.
Your Honor, in the very final article, there's a date that needs to be changed from June 20th, 2010 to June 20th, 2011. That, if the council approves this, that change will be made before the document is presented to the manager for his signature.
If the maker of the motion would take that into consideration, understanding the offering of the city attorney, Chair would entertain a motion.
Motion to extend the lease agreement with the Sons of Italy at 1 Plains Avenue for a period of 1 year from April 1, 2011 to March 31st, 2012, recognizing that the document needs a date change in the last paragraph.
Second.
Discussion. Before we go to a roll call vote, I will disclose that I am an honorary member only of the Sons of Italy and do not feel a moral or financial impediment to voting here, and I hope no one has an objection. With that, a roll call vote.
Assistant Mayor Noveline Claiborne.
Yes.
Councilor Lister.
Yes.
Councilor Hedgemonic.
Yes.
Councilor Spear.
Yes.
Councilor Dwyer.
Yes.
Councilor Coviello.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Smith.
Yes.
Mayor Farini.
Yes. Item 4.
Thank you, Your Honor. This one's a little different coming before you tonight, and I'm not asking for an actual vote for this evening because of the length of term that's being requested by the Creek Athletic Club. We do have representative from the Creek Athletic Club here, Al Cochran. I would ask that the City Council allow for suspension of the rules, allow him to speak on this issue, if there's no objection, Your Honor.
Well, let's just do it this way from the chair. We understand that this is not going to be before us for a vote this evening. The chair would entertain a motion to suspend the rules for purposes of Alec McCachran to speak to this issue.
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, roll call, please.
Assistant Mayor Noveline Claiborne.
Yes.
Councilor Lister.
Yes.
Councilor Hedgemonic.
Yes.
Councilor Spear.
Yes.
Councilor Dwyer.
Yes.
Councilor Coviello.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Smith.
Yes.
Mayor Farini.
Yes.
And as Alex coming before, I'd like to just, if you recall last year when we talked about this agreement, the Creek Athletic Club and the city staff were talking about how can we do improvements to the building. There are many improvements that are required in that building. So Alex and the Creek members had some ideas about a longer-term lease and putting more capital into that building over time. So I'd let Alec talk to the issue.
Alec, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and City Manager. My name's Alec McCachran, live at 81 Cottage Street in Portsmouth, and I'm a member of the Crick AC. The building itself is quite old, built in the late 1800s, has a lot of deferred maintenance. The dormers need to be refurbished. All the shingles have come off them. The electrical service is ancient. The garage doors on the building need to be replaced. There's a lot of dry rot. We open them up once a year when we wheel the Eureka out for the National Crime Night Out, and they've got about 5 or 6 more turns on them before they come off, probably. So all of that work requires money to do, and We're not looking to the city to pay anything because, we're using the building. But in order to make that type of commitment to the building, we're looking to get a commitment back from the city for a longer-term lease. We don't have the money to do all of these repairs in 1 year or 2 years or probably even 4 or 5 years. We're looking to budget them over a period of time. And in sitting down and looking at the amount of work that has to be done, we put together basically a 10-year schedule for the improvements. We had a meeting with the city manager and city attorney and representatives of the city, other representatives of the city, and went through the work that we would like to do. And I don't want to say we came to an agreement because we didn't, but we had sort of a consensus about the priority of the work that needs to be done, the order of attack for the building. And that's the reason that we're seeking a longer-term lease. And we're flexible. If the city, says that, 10 is too long, 5 or 8 is more appropriate, then we would try and work with that, but we're going to have to scale back the amount of work that we can commit to within that time frame.
Any questions for Alec at this time? Assistant Mayor Noveline Claiborne.
How do you raise the money? Do you raise it from your membership to do these repairs?
We have dues. We have a golf tournament. We have raffles. That's the form of revenue.
And you're confident that you can raise the amount of money that's needed to do the repairs?
We are, yeah.
Thank you.
Council Coviello.
How many members are there, Alec?
We have approximately 60 to 70 members.
Mostly Portsmouth residents, or?
Yes, and mostly people either living in the neighborhood or they grew up in the neighborhood. It's the old Irish neighborhood in town, and most of the members are old Irish guys. Yeah.
Councilor Lister.
This is a question for the city manager, maybe. Do we carry fire insurance in this building, or do they carry
On all
insurance?
our city buildings, we have insurance.
Council Coviello.
It is more of a comment, is that I would say that in the years that I've been there, 12 years I've been in the neighborhood, it has turned into what is that building, who are those men that go in there at strange hours and strange days, to, oh, this is the group that comes out a National Night Out. And it's really turned into more of a community building since that connection has been made to the public. So I appreciate it as a member of the neighborhood, and I'm sure a lot of other people do.
So what we would be requesting, we've voted, we've suspended the rules. Mr. McCachran has had an opportunity to speak and answer questions. What we would then do is we'd need a chair to entertain a motion, if we're going to go forward with this, to authorize the city manager to bring this back for a formal vote the February 22nd, 2011
So moved.
council meeting.
Second.
Discussion.
Your Honor.
Council Spear.
So if I understand the lease correctly, the capital improvements are made in lieu of lease payments?
Correct.
And there was one other part of the lease I wanted clarification on. On item 3, it's the term of the lease, a 10-year lease, and it can be terminated by the club, but not by the city. Is that a correct interpretation of the lease?
That's the correct interpretation.
I guess since we're just talking about a report back, it seems like a little uneven in this case that the landlord can't terminate it for 10 years is a long time because things can change over 10 years, and I'd hate to.
They don't adhere to the schedule.
I mean, I'm
Right.
just.
The thinking is that if the Quick AC determined that it was unable to raise the funds, for example,
I see.
rather than to continue to be obligated, the Quick AC could terminate the lease.
Well,
But they have to adhere to the schedule.
Right.
Oh.
If they were not able to adhere to the schedule, they'd be able to terminate the lease.
But we would be able to terminate the lease, too.
Right, we would terminate it if they didn't adhere.
Right. I'll stop.
Clarification offered. Further discussion. Assistant Mayor Noveline Claiborne.
If the Creek AC didn't exist, the city would be responsible for the building, correct? I mean, it's a
That's
city-owned
correct.
building. So
That's correct.
the improvements that they're proposing is really a help to us because then we don't incur those expenses.
Right. Correct.
And it's been going on for a long time, correct? The Crick AC is how old?
The early 1900s, 1920s.
You've obviously done a great job in 100 years, almost.
Almost 100 years, yeah.
Further discussion. Council Coviello.
Just to be honest and continuing the assistant mayor's conversation is that one option could be divest ourselves of this land and turn it into residential housing. But I'm not in favor of that. I'm just saying, we have to speak honestly about every property and look at every property for its merits. And I don't know that this benefits the city to divest this particular property for residential purposes next to a park. It houses an historic fire apparatus. I think it is better served the community to keep this going the way it is.
Further discussion. Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Assistant Mayor Noveline Claiborne.
Yes.
Council Lister.
Yes.
Council Hitchmonick.
Yes.
Council Spear.
Yes.
Council Dwyer.
Yes.
Council Coviello.
Yes.
Council Kennedy.
Yes.
Council Smith.
Yes.
Mayor Farini.
Yes.
So, Your Honor, we'll bring this back on the 22nd for a formal vote.
Very good, and thank you. Thank you, Mr. McEachran. We now move on to item 5.
Thank you, Your Honor. The next item deals with an item, again, that I'd ask if, with the indulgence of the City Council, to allow Joe Kuchar, as a member of the staff of the Housing Authority, to come forward to speak to this issue.
How about a
Move
motion?
to suspend the rules?
Second.
Thank you, thank you. Discussion, hearing none. Roll call, please.
Assistant Mayor Noveline Claiborne.
Yes.
Council Lister.
Yes.
Council Hitchmonick.
Jerry.
Councilor Hitmonick?
Yes?
Yes. Roll call to suspend the rules. Councilor Spear. Councilor Dwyer.
Yes.
Councilor Coviello.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Smith.
Yes.
Mayor Farini.
Yes.
Joe?
Mr. Kuchar?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I also, before we get into this, agree that the roosters should stay home.
Okay.
We're asking, once again, to defer payment on a $300,000 loan that was given to Wamasett Place in the 1970s in order to purchase the facility at the time. Since 2007, we have been trying to renovate Wamasett Place, which is a very old and tired public housing development for families. We are proposing to put $57,000 per unit into each property for $5.7 million of investment. The budget is extremely tight, and we were going to use some RGGI money. I'm sure you've heard of that. It's the energy money that's been given to the state. We heard yesterday, I believe, that we don't qualify for that money because we had gotten some energy funds back in 2006, which precludes us from any new money. So we have to fill that gap, and we would like to defer this loan once again that was given to us by the Community Development Block Grant Program for 30 years, I believe. This is Bill Shanahan. He is our consultant from Northern New England Housing Investment Fund. So basically, that's the request.
Okay.
Did I miss anything, Bill?
In Your Honor, what we're recommending is that this be referred to the Community Development Block Grant Citizens Advisory Committee for a report back and recommendation to the City Council.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Smith. Councilor Lister for the second discussion. Questions, et cetera. Councilor Coviello.
Is there a timing issue at all involved with the timing of the CDBG group and when the timing of you need the funds?
I believe the CDBG group meets this Thursday, and we're going to be before them on Thursday. And it probably would come back here, I believe, for the February 22nd meeting.
Correct.
And that would be perfect for us, because we're looking for a closing on or about March 23rd.
Thank you, Councilor Coviello. Further discussion? Okay. Thank you very much. I'm trying to remember, did we have a motion? We do have a motion pending, so we need a roll call vote.
Assistant Mayor Noveline Claiborne.
Yes.
Council Lister.
Yes.
Council Hitchmonick.
Yes.
Councilor Spear.
Yes.
Council Dwyer.
Yes.
Council Coviello.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Counselor Smith?
Yes.
Mayor Farini?
Yes.
Thank you, John.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me, Your Honor, can you state the motion, because did we vote on
Yes,
the
this
motion?
is to refer this matter
Oh, no, I
to,
know, but did we really vote on the motion? I thought we just voted on to suspend the rules.
We had already suspended the rules earlier.
Right, but did we actually have a motion for this?
we had a motion made by Counsel
I made the
Coviello,
motion.
seconded by Counsel
All
Lister.
right.
We did, yeah.
I missed that.
Very good.
Thank you. Thanks, though.
Thank you,
It's
John.
always important to remind us. That's a good thing. It's good.
The next, thank you, Your Honor. The next item is request for a license from the Friends of the Music Hall, owner of the Music Hall Loft, for property located at 131 Congress Street, to install a projecting sign. This is pretty standard. It went before the planning board, and his recommendation back to the planning board with the various stipulations, and we're asking for approval this evening for the sign.
Counsel Coviello.
I need to recuse myself from this.
Okay, no, for the record, Counsel Coviello is recused. Does anyone care to make a motion?
Move to accept planning board's recommendation with stipulations?
Thank you, Counsellor Smith. Do we have we have a second discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Assistant Mayor Novelin Claiborne?
Yes.
Counselor Lister?
Yes.
Counselor Hedgemonic?
Yes.
Counselor Spear?
Yes.
Counselor Dwyer?
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy?
Yes.
Counselor Smith?
Yes.
Mayor Farini?
Yes.
8-0.
Thank you. We now move on to item 7.
Thank you, Your Honor. The next item is Department of Health and Human Services proposed recommendation for adjusting fluoride levels. For your information, I've attached a letter that was received by Public Works on February 3rd, this past Thursday, from the Department of Health and Human Services regarding adjusted fluoride levels in the water system. In January, HHS and the Environmental Protection Agency announced the results of a study performed under the auspices of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and the recommended lowering of levels of fluoride in drinking water to 0.7 milligrams per liter. The recommendations of the study are still in comment period, and final guidance is not anticipated until the springtime. The current state recommended level range is 0.9 to 1.7 milligrams per liter. The Portsmouth system has been feeding fluoride at an average of 1.0 since 1973, when the city voted to begin the practice of adding fluoride. Based on the most recent information from the Department of Environmental Services and HHS, and announcing the support for the system adjustment to the lower levels of 0.7 milligrams per liter for an interim period, the city staff is recommending that we move in this direction if the city council so chooses, and we would be able to implement this adjustment in about a 2-day period at all our locations.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, duly seconded. Discussion.
I have a question.
Councilor Hedgemonic.
We're talking about, 0.7 milligrams per liter, but the recommendation is 7 parts per million. Are the two numbers the same?
You want to? I'll have Dave Allen come
7
down
parts per
and
million
speak to the
sounds a lot
issue.
less than 0.7 milligrams per liter. Just a clarification.
Yep. Welcome, Mr. Allen.
Mr. Mayor, that milligrams per liter equates to parts per million. So you can call it 7 parts per million, or you can say 0.7 milligrams per liter is the same as 7 parts per million.
Okay.
Assistant Mayor Novelin Claiborne.
Does that affect the other communities that we service water to?
Yes, we send the same water out throughout the system.
Further discussion or inquiry? Counsel Kennedy.
Given that information, what are the other communities in agreement of this, I'm assuming?
Most of the communities are buying water from us on a wholesale and retail basis. So we are providing them water, and we adjust chemicals in other parts of the of the system when need be. And this would be just a continuing of our standard operation. Not only that, but it has a state guidance that's given to us from HHS. So we felt it was important to bring it and go forward immediately.
Further discussion or inquiry? Counsel Lister.
I'd just like to ask the city manager, John, do you think it'd be important for a letter to go to those communities from the city council, just letting them know that
We can send something from probably better to send it from the water department directly. So Dave Allen probably could send something to the selectman's office in the communities that we serve.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good point. We'll go Councilor Smith, and we'll move up this way.
Thank you. I was going to request the same thing for a letter. The other one is, since we're lowering the amount of fluoride, is the city gaining a savings?
Yeah, we spend, $30,000 a year in chemicals, so you're talking about a 30% reduction. So it's, relative to our whole budget, it's not significant, but there would be some chemical savings over the course of the year. Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
What's the plan to let people, I know some people, due to dental concerns, take fluoride even with the fluoride. What's the plan to let people know in our community besides the newspapers? Is there any plan?
We'll be sending out our annual water quality report, and that would be a good place for us to highlight that particular issue.
Okay.
Councilor Coviello.
That answer my question?
Assistant Mayor Noveline Clayburgh.
Is one of the reasons for this because when it was instituted in 1950 or whatever it was, we didn't have fluoride in toothpaste and mouthwash, and is it because there are other areas where we get fluoride now than just our water? Is that part of the recommendation to lower it?
Yeah, I think so. I think that there are other sources, and there are some water systems where they have to remove fluoride, where there's naturally occurring fluoride. I mean, where ours is a system that we don't have naturally occurring fluoride, so we add, and I think as time has gone on, there have been more and more studies about this, and this was really the culmination of the CDC doing an extensive study on that, and this is their recommendation is the 0.7.
Further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Assistant Mayor Noveline Clayburgh.
Yes.
Councilor Lister.
Yes.
Councilor Hidjmark.
Yes.
Councilor Spear.
Yes.
Councilor Dwyer.
Yes.
Councilor Coviello.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Smith.
Yes.
Mayor Farini.
Yes.
9-0.
That's all the action items I have, Your Honor. The only thing I'd like to bring to your attention is that Wednesday we do have the joint Building Committee, Recreation Board work session with the City Council starting at 6:30 p.m.
And please note that I misspoke earlier indicating that it was the school board. Indeed, it's the Recreation Board, so thank you, John. We now move on to Mayor's portion of the agenda. This evening I have before you appointments. Before I get to those, I will say, as I promised Councilor Coviello I would, that remember to get your questions to me at the office at City Hall by March 1, so that we may submit those questions to the various departments. It's going to be my practice to continue to remind and ask for those questions. I would love to receive them, and we'll make sure that they're then provided to the various departments in advance of their meetings with us so that we can get those responses in advance. And we will request that those responses be given in advance as well. Councilor Kennedy.
Your Honor, I just wanted to let you know that I've already submitted mine in November, and I assume that we'll get answers to those.
We will note it for the record, and we'll make sure that those are put together with all the others that we receive.
Thank you.
Next, we have appointments to be voted. First is Gary Lowe, appointment to the Sustainable Practices Blue Ribbon Committee. Ed Everett Eaton, reappointment to the Economic Development Commission. Elias Abelson, reappointment to the Board of Library Trustees. Valerie Cunningham, appointment to the Board of Library Trustees. Kate Gill Presley, appointment to the Board of Library Trustees. And Derek Durbin, appointment as regular member of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. Do we have motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Assistant Mayor Noveline Clayburgh.
Yes.
Councilor Lister.
Yes.
Councilor Hidjmark.
Yes.
Councilor Spear.
Yes.
Councilor Dwyer.
Yes.
Councilor Coviello.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Smith.
Yes.
Mayor Farini.
Thank you very much. We are now on item C. Councilor Kennedy speaking in the first instance regarding assessment.
Yeah, I referenced it in your manual, but also I gave you some pages. In meeting with some of our community citizens on assessment, we went through the manuals, and one of the questions we really had a hard time distinguishing and really figuring out by using the manuals as a source, as well as other sources, federal and state guidelines, was how do we come up with our neighborhoods? And if you look at the, it was stated right in the manuals, but if I took only the first few pages of the manual looking at the residential neighborhoods, and if you look at it, there can be some all over, the dark spaces being all part of the same resident on 102. And yet on some, like map 103, you can see that it's really clear that that's a neighborhood. On 104, you can see that it's really clear that it's a neighborhood. And then you go to 108, and it's all over the place. So we really couldn't get an idea of how do we distinguish what a neighborhood is, and what does a neighborhood look like, and what makes up a neighborhood. Now, that might not be something we can get tonight, and I understand that, and I respect that, but we just need clarification. We were lost on really what makes a neighborhood, and how can some of these places be related to each other. And maybe we have the term neighborhood wrong. I don't know. But we were really having a hard time. I mean, just to throw out 127, you can see it's in two very separate places on those assessor neighborhood maps. So that's a question we have after really plowing through the books and really trying to get the information. And the second question I have, and I think what I am finding, and this is my non-professional, just personal view, but listening to a lot of people and sitting down with these manuals, is people are really comfortable with what the assessment office, for the most part, did with their houses. But that's also very easily to look at. There's background. I mean, you can look at the age of a house and you can say whether they remodeled or not. You can tell how many bathrooms. So that is really concrete, very visible. And there's a lot of state and federal guidelines. I even went as far as to look at what the assessment has to do for certification. And it's really clear on that, and it's very easily to distinguish. The problem we're having is land values. What makes a land value? And I guess one of the questions I have, and maybe this is for the city attorney, is there court cases, and I know you can't get this to me tonight, but is there court cases out there to really say that we can just look at land values? Because what I'm hearing, what I'm seeing, spending my energy with a lot of our citizens and talking about their assessments and going through the manuals, is that people are really having a hard time and they really want to look at those land values. And it's not as concrete, it's not as visual. Even in a lot of our information that we've obtained from various sources, from state and federal guidelines, that is one of the hardest things to really look at. But that's where basically the rubber meets the road. Those land values people are having a hard time with. So I don't know what we can do, or if we can just, when people do their abatements, if they can really just focus on the land value or not, if there's any court cases on that. But what I'm finding is that after all this time and all this research, the two things that people are having a hard time with and can't really understand is the neighborhood and what makes up the neighborhood. And as you can see these pictures, it is perplexing. Maybe there's an aha moment we're going to have with a great answer, and then the land values, because they are so different depending on where you live. They are so different even within neighbors, and it's really hard. But I think we can take the actual structure out of the mix and just really look at those two things. And I don't know where we go from here. I guess that was a question I was going to put out to the council. And I don't expect information back tonight, but where do we go to find this, and where do we go from here?
City Manager, do you care to speak to this?
Sure. We'll take what you have as questions, and we'll provide a memorandum back to the City Council the best we can, and try to answer the questions. There's nothing more that we can do other than that.
I appreciate that.
All righty. Councilor Kennedy, item 2.
Yeah, my second item is the county budget. I really appreciate the mayor going with me and others to the county. And my concern after leaving that night, I was perplexed. One is I'm not sure really what the oversight is. And the second, just by a simple comment that was made that it's cheaper to house prisoners in another county than our own, really got me thinking about who is overseeing the county budget to benefit us and to and is it time that maybe we asked our local city officials to take more of an active role to oversee the budget and get back information, or maybe I'm stepping out of bounds on that. I don't know. But it seems like this thing is on a train with no crossing guards or no crossing areas to really kind of do some checks and balances.
Well, just to speak with that, and just the city manager, I'm going to ask him to speak as well. As a matter of governance, the legislature says they are what they are. So the question then becomes, what political, push do we have outside what is actually designed by the legislature? There is a county government. They can raise money. That's how they're designed. But city manager could speak to this, I think, and in particular, there may be an answer.
Well, in Rockingham County, there are 3 commissioners that are elected. There are also other elected offices within the county, such as the council sits for the city of Portsmouth, so does the legislative delegation from the county. So those elected, so our legislators sit as a legislative body on that and vote on that. So as a group from Rockingham County, all state legislators sit on and act like the city council would act on a budget. And the county commissioners act as I would act on a budget in terms of submitting the budget to the legislature, and they would act on that. My suggestion is that we continue to work through our legislative subcommittee to push the county legislative delegation, such as we can through as the mayor had sent the letter to them. We sent copies of that to our legislative delegation. We will continue to press them. This is not a unique experience in New Hampshire with municipalities being concerned with county government. I think it's something that we all have experienced. And Portsmouth, to a degree that we're the highest paying within the Rockingham County because of our our assessed values. We continue to watch, but as the mayor said, a lot of this is set by statute. I don't think it's something we would ignore. It's something that we can press on with regards to the real place to press from the city council's level would be legislative delegation. That's where they're the ones that take the vote. They're the ones that make the vote. The county commissioners propose, and then the legislative debates the budget and can amend it.
Councilor Kennedy.
Just a little follow-up on that. And I understand that. I guess what concerned me as one of the commissioners in talking to her at that meeting was that she was even saying it was concerned that some of the stuff could be some of these items could be put back in to the budget at a later point. And I guess if that can happen, then is there a way we can have a more concerted effort here to kind of hit our legislators about this? I'm just curious.
Well, what we could do is work with the legislative subcommittee that we have, and again, ask when the vote's going to come forward on the budget and get presence there. The best way to deal with the issue is to have presence, as you did and as the mayor did, at this meeting. What you probably noticed at that meeting was there was a lack of other communities at the meeting. So what we need to do is continue to put pressure on. I believe what's happened here is continuation of pressure that's been put on. As recently as yesterday, I believe they're looking to adjust their budget. At least that's what I've read in the paper. So we'll continue to press them.
Thank you, Councilor Kennedy, and we will make sure in our that we communicate with the legislative delegation that we would like them to attend the vote and make sure that they assist us in addressing the issues of fairness as between the county and the city and the other municipalities and towns that are served by the county. Further, well, thank you, Councilor Kennedy, for that. And now we move to item D.
Thank you.
Councilor Smith.
I'd like to ask for I'd like to make the motion to accept the action sheet of the Traffic and Safety Committee from January 13th. If I can have a second.
Second.
We have a motion duly seconded. Councilor Smith.
Thank you. There wasn't anything in here that requires an ordinance, but if there are any questions on any specific items, I'm more than happy to answer.
Questions for Councilor Smith? Councilor Coviello.
It's not so much of a question, but a comment that this came before the Recreation Board, and I don't know if it's going to come before the council, the Hislop Park ball field expansion. Just to let other councilors know, and I know sure Councilor Smith is aware, the Little League is expanding that, planning on expanding that park at their own cost, their own expense. And it's in the order of magnitude of $60,000, if I recall correctly from our last meeting. And it's great. It's similar to the conversation we had tonight about the blanking on the name, the Creek AC, where they're spending the money to improve a city facility. And I just wanted to acknowledge that here today and say thank you. And that was it.
Thanks, Council Coviello.
And with that, I'd also like to add that what we're specifically looking for, we'll be getting back at our next meeting of the Traffic and Safety Committee, is to look for expanding parking areas. The neighbors are concerned out there about the cars going into the neighborhood and taking up their parking spaces. So we're looking to expand parking maybe underneath the I-95 high-level bridge.
Thank you, Councilor Smith. Discussion, further inquiry? If not, roll call, please.
Assistant Mayor Noveline Kleberg.
Yes.
Council Lister.
Yes.
Council Hitchmonick.
Yes.
Councilor Spear.
Yes.
Councilor Dwyer.
Yes.
Councilor Coviello.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
No.
Councilor Smith.
Yes.
Mayor Farini.
Yes.
8-1.
Thank you. I'd like to move on to make the motion to accept the action sheet of our parking committee, which was also held on January 13th. There's nothing in here that requires an ordinance change, but I'm happy to answer any questions on any specific items.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Assistant Mayor Noveline Kleberg.
Yes.
Councilor Lister.
Yes.
Councilor Hitchmonick.
Yes.
Councilor Spear.
Yes.
Councilor Dwyer.
Yes.
Councilor Coviello.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
No.
Councilor Smith.
Yes.
Mayor Farini.
Yes.
Passes 8-1.
And one other item under Councilor
And
Smith.
lastly, forgive me for having it as an oral report. I prefer to do things in writing. But it's basically requesting that we instruct the city attorney to come up with an ordinance so we can get before the public on banning of synthetic marijuana. I'll make that as a motion, and I'll speak to it.
Well, why don't you
Actually-
go make your motion if you wish. Go ahead.
Yeah, so to instruct the city attorney to come back with an ordinance that would ban synthetic marijuana.
We have
Second.
Do we have a second? Councilor Smith.
Thank you. It had come to my attention, and the city of Franklin has already done it. The town of Seabrook is looking at it, and the federal government as well as state government is already looking at doing this, but their wheels seem to turn a little bit slower than ours. This is something that is currently in the city of Portsmouth. It goes by several names. K2 is one, Spice is another. And basically what it is, it's a chemical that is sprayed onto herbs and is used such as marijuana. I am not trying to open up a debate by any means on legalizing marijuana or any of that. This is just to be able to get in front of the public the possibility of banning this. It has become to my attention that it is in the city, is available right now for sale, and is showing up in some of the schools. So that causes me alarm that this is starting to show up in the schools, and with that, that's why I'm asking for this.
Thanks, Councilor Smith. So the action would be to bring it back. I just have a question. I'm just going to, I don't see no one raising a hand. I'm going to ask the city attorney a question. Do you have any idea, maybe it's for the legislative delegation, whether there's anything pending at the state level on this, or have you seen anything?
I am not aware of anything.
Okay. All right.
It's my understanding, if I may, that
Yep.
they will be looking into it, but it just hasn't been, nothing's been filed at this time, hence the reasons why their wheels seem to turn a little slower than ours.
Okay. Further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Assistant Mayor Noveline Kleberg.
Yes.
Councilor Lister.
Yes.
Councilor Hitchmonick.
Yes.
Councilor Spear.
No.
Councilor Dwyer.
Yes.
Councilor Coviello.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Smith.
Yes.
Mayor Farini.
Yes.
Passes 8-1.
Thank you. And so that concludes Councilor Smith's portion of the agenda. We move on to item 13, miscellaneous and unfinished business. Do we have any? Looking around, I don't see anyone move. With that, we get to item 14 at 10 p.m. or earlier, and we are earlier than 10 p.m.
Mayor.
Yes, Assistant Mayor Noveline Kleberg.
I wanted to congratulate Councilor Lister for jumping into the Atlantic Ocean yesterday for the benefit of Special Olympics. My son Michael also did it. We raised $776,000. But it was a very exciting day.
And he's here to tell the tale.
That's right.
Thank you, Councilor Lister. Fine. Anything further? If not, Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, hearing none. All in favor, roll call, please.
Sisterman Overland Clayburgh.
Yes.
Counselor Lister.
Yes.
Counselor Hidjmatic.
Yes.
Counselor Spear.
Yes.
Counselor Dwyer.
Yes.
Counselor Coviello.
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy.
Yes.
Counselor Smith.
Yes.
Mayor Farini.
Yes.
0.
Thank you and good night.